Welcome to the Wealthy LaLa Show with myself, Laurie Laursen. Today is episode 157. You know what's really funny is I'd actually started this show and I got like about 3 minutes in. And like I've told you guys before, if I start saying something out of my mouth that's heavy, I shut up. So rather than make it confusing and rather than have to try and explain myself, and rather than having to maybe pull my foot out of my mouth, depending on what I'm talking about, I stopped the recording and shut up. So, anyways, I really highly recommend that. If you are ever in a situation and are, starting to talk to somebody and it's heavy in your world to keep talking, I'd stop. It really does. It just it doesn't mean necessarily that it's always heavy or wrong to say it, because it's not really wrong. It's just, is it something that creates greater? And it may not be because of what you're actually saying. It could be that the other people can't hear it. Now, I don't get the case with what I was recording. Wasn't things that other people couldn't hear. I just really get that it just wasn't interesting. It wasn't fun. And it wasn't really going to go anywhere without just creating a lot more questions and explanations and so on and so forth. So I stopped. I did. But the thing that I did want to talk about, though, that I had started talking about, was the idea of addiction. So in our, society, reality that we live in today, addiction is pretty much, your standard, maybe, smoking, drugs, alcohol, food. There can be other ones. Sure, there's like sex addiction, hoarding, things like that. And what's really interesting is about, I don't know, say 5 years ago or whatever, maybe a little bit longer than that, I met a woman who actually was facilitating with this modality that I used to take an awful lot of classes with. And her name is Marilyn Bradford. So you can find her. She actually wrote a book called Right Recovery for You. You can actually find it on Amazon if you want it. And she was my first experience. She's a woman who I can't remember. I think she's a psychologist. Yeah, because I don't think she was a psychiatrist, so it's a psychologist. But she works with people with addictions in the US. And she was doing that job before, and then she came across this modality. And then within this modality, it actually gave her questions. And with bringing in the questions and the other tools, she was able to create, healings, change. The people would choose it. The change in this people's world. Like one guy, I remember hearing a story, he had like something like a cocaine addiction, and within 6 weeks, he was over it, like really over it. And we all know how hard it is to just not even have chocolate one night or not have chips or something. Could you imagine something with such a high addictive tendency as something like cocaine with quite a hit on it? And what she discovered is underneath the addiction to things is the addiction to the wrongness of self. And I thought that was really fascinating. And the part that kind of blew me away too was not only did she call things like what I just named as addictions, but there's actually things like addiction to trauma drama, addiction to criticizing, addiction for looking for wrongness. Think of it for yourself and for others. And it'd be like, why would you think that was an addiction? And when I look at Dr. Joe Dispenza's work now and how he talks about our bodies get addicted to these states, and so the state of guilt or the state of anger, and when we sit in those states for a really long time, or longer than healthy, let's say, so however long that is depending on the situation and each of us, is that when you stay in it, your body chemistry actually changes. And when your body chemistry actually changes, you actually then actually crave things like anger or trauma drama or rage or criticism, that you actually begin to need the hit of it. And that's why you'll find, and this is really interesting, because like when I tie this stuff in from all these different things I learn, that Abraham Hicks talks about, like they have this emotional scale, and when you're looking at the emotional scale, you're always looking to feel relief. And every emotion is not right or wrong. It's just a matter of how long you stay in it, that begins to create in your life. So like if you're feeling in a place of powerlessness, which is at the lowest end of the emotional scale, according to Abraham Hicks, if you bring yourself up, which would be number 22, and if you bring yourself up to anger's at 17, you're going to actually feel better with the anger. Then it's just a matter of keeping yourself moving up the scale to say doubt, to then pessimism, to then optimism, to then enthusiasm, to then joy, but allowing yourself to move up the scale. And again, all of these emotions, because there's more than 22 on this little card thing that I have, is that all of them are just information. And information for us to find out where we're functioning, how we're responding to something, how we're being impacted by something, and then just kind of going from there to see what to do about it. Now, back to Marilyn Bradford, one of the things I really loved, and I typed this out, Consciousness and Addiction and Having All of You by Marilyn Bradford. The more you are willing to have you, the more of you you allow to show up, the less addiction can exist. Consciousness is larger and stronger than anti-consciousness, but you have to choose it. When you choose to engage in addictive or compulsive behaviors, you are choosing against you and the greatness of you. You are choosing anti-consciousness. Would you be willing to choose for you, your life, and the consciousness you actually are? I just love this because I'm not a person that's ever been addicted to alcohol, nor drugs, nor smoking, nor gambling. I don't even have an addiction to food. I could say that I eat anti-consciously sometimes, but I wouldn't say like I have that excessive addiction. But at the same time, I do choose it unconsciously. And so when we engage in any addictive or compulsive behaviors, so we could be addicted to worry, we could be addicted to sadness, we could be addicted to anger, we could be addicted to cigarettes, we could be addicted to drugs, we could be addicted to alcohol, and then there was something else I was watching today where a person, and I realized this was me before, not so much now, but being there for everyone else as a way to avoid me. And when I looked at that, I thought, you know what, that's like an addiction too. Without even knowing, it's an energy we keep choosing over and over and over again. It'd be really interesting if I was to Google what the definition of addiction is. I am really curious now. Let's just see what Mr. Google says. The fact or condition of being addicted to a particular substance, thing, or activity. Oh, this is kind of, addiction is the repeated involvement with something. That is really, really interesting. And let's see here. Addiction is the repeated involvement with a substance or activity despite the substantial harm it now causes. Because of that involvement was and may continue to be pleasurable and or valuable. Now, we can be addicted to being a people pleaser. Like, isn't that crazy? We can be addicted. Like going back to this thing when so Kyle Cease is a fella who's a comedian who has now turned into, well, he's still a comedian because he's still funny as heck. Um, but he's turned into like almost like an empowerment coach, and he leads workshops and stuff. You can find him on the internet, kylecease.ca or .com, I think. Yeah. And I was just watching one of his shows right now. Um, and he said to this one fella who kept talking about how he wanted to be there for everybody else, and he wanted to be this empowering coach, and he wanted to go out there and he wanted to just inspire people and help them find themselves through through life. And what's funny, but not funny, the irony of it is that he just like less than 2 weeks before, his wife or girlfriend, they didn't actually say, just lost two two babies, like twins. They were expecting twins. And he was up on stage and he was like, I want to empower other people, and so on and so forth. And Kyle kept bringing him back to himself, saying, like, come back to you. Now, these are my words. Oh, you guys, it was such a great, just a great, great example of where we give ourselves up for something else. And so most of us, and isn't this kind of funny? Because what's popping now, funny, not funny, where Marilyn says, the more you're willing to have you, the more of you allow to show up, the less addiction can exist. To me, that's also less separation from yourself. So, or no separation from yourself. But we make it so right. I would say less than before, but we've made it so right in the past that this person did everything for everyone else. They put everyone else first. Like that was a beautiful, amazing thing to do. And I know that when I was putting everyone else before me, I was actually slowly dying inside, and I created a lot of illness in my body. Like I created a lot of dis-ease in my life, mentally, emotionally, physically. So I was addicted to people pleasing. And, if that's hard for you to hear, just, bear with me. It's not something to be judged. It's just something to gather information on. And if you're hearing this for yourself for the first time, I'd love to invite you to, what are you actually asking for? That this information is coming to you at this time. Is there a place where you desire to have more in your life? So kind of this being there for everyone else is a way to avoid me. One of the ways that I can see that I did it, and I mean, you guys, I'm calling this show The Wealthy LaLa, because LaLa is my grandma name. I tell ya, I love being a LaLa. And as with anything, I can also use it against me. I can also use it not taking care of me. So, like, if I was to drop everything and then just be a grandma every day, and oh, please, it's so funny in this day and age, you feel like you have to explain yourself when you say something like that. I am not judging anybody who actually chooses that. I think it's amazing when each of us chooses what works for us, what's in alignment with us, what resonates with us, what is congruent with us. I was not a full-time stay-at-home mom, just wasn't my thing. I was a part-time worker and part-time stay-at-home mom. That really worked for me. It made me a better mom. That was actually really healthy. Now, if you're a person who wants to be a full-time grandma and that's what resonates for you, have at her, have a great time. And if you're also someone who is just happy to see the grandkids on the weekend or the odd evening, then that's okay too. And that goes for any of us, like being congruent with our lives. How many of us, if we were to actually fill ourselves up with the life that we actually desire, that we as people, the people that used to be little kids, that used to be teenagers, that are adults now, the desires that we had, the desires that we still have, the desires that we, desire to create. What if having that, choosing, and the more you're willing to have you, the more of you allow to show up, the less addiction can exist. So we're at the end of today's show, and I just really want to invite you to be open to the fact that, is there an area in your life that you're actually addicted to that's just shocking that you would not have ever thought you were actually addicted to? Because I'm telling you, when I saw the addiction to drama I had in my world, or negativity, or people pleasing, I was some dumbfounded for a little bit. So, and I'm so grateful, because then I could change it if I wanted to. So, on that note, you guys, thanks again for listening. Have yourself an amazing day. And I really, truly look forward to next time. Take care and big hugs.